Mark Zuckerberg has been quietly spending hundreds of millions of dollars on real estate over the past 10 years on the Hawaii island of Kauai. He has spent around $170 million on land and is projected to spend another $270 million on a top-secret billionaire bunker. In today's episode we review this crazy story together. This brings us to a man called Douglas Rushkoff. He is a famous American media theorist, author, lecturer, and currently a professor of media theory and digital economics at Queens College, City University of New York. He has done very profound research on the impact of technology, culture, and media on society. Has published more than a dozen books. For example, people used to go to the store to buy things, but now they all shop online, it's just digitized. He studies the impact of this digitization on human behavior and social habits. He was formerly a director and had studied performing arts. This man is truly a multifaceted talent, possessing a broad range of knowledge. What's more, he is a globally recognized authority in the domain of the impact of the digital economy on human society. 4 decades ago, during the 1980s and 1990s, he offered highly positive and favorable assessments of a host of technological innovation companies in Silicon Valley. He predicted that these enterprises would usher human society into a brand new realm characterized by rapid development and great prosperity. As it turns out, those Silicon Valley tech giants, such as Apple, Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, AMD, Intel, and Nvidia, have indeed become the largest, most profitable, and most influential companies across the globe. They have even become an indispensable part of modern society, with people's lives relying heavily on them. In other words, his prophecy has come true. However, in recent years, Rushkoff has gradually shifted his perspective. He has commenced to criticize digital economies and technologies, frequently mentioning in the media and during interviews that these giant enterprises might drive human society towards a cyberpunk world. This future world has several distinct features. First of all, it's the blend of high technology and a low quality of life. That means technology is advancing super fast and getting really advanced, but people's living standards remain pretty low. Secondly, it's the integration of the real world and the virtual world. You can hardly tell what's real and what's virtual. Thirdly, it's the fusion of humans and technology. Some people usually have mechanical parts in their bodies. Fourthly, it's highly capitalized. Big corporations dominate this world, and their influence might even exceed that of the government. People are living under the control of these big companies. He reckons that if we keep going with the current development trend, it's very likely that the world will turn out like that. Later, in 2017, he encountered an incident that brought him a profound realization. He sensed that the cyberpunk future world he had conceived was truly about to materialize and was no longer a mere figment of the imagination. Moreover, he believed that the future situation might even deteriorate further. As a result, in September 2022, he penned a book. The book is called Survival of the Richest: Escape Fantasies of Tech Billionaires. In the book, he comes up with this: a few years ago he was invited to give a talk to investors in the tech sector. The speech was about the future of the digital economy. For speeches like this, he would receive similar invitations a dozen times a year from various companies and groups, which he would usually decline. Because he felt that not many people were really interested in the future development of digital technology, and they were more concerned about which virtual currency they should invest in, so he basically refused. But this time, he agreed to the invitation for a very simple reason: it was that the compensation offered to him this time was exceptionally high. So, how high was the remuneration? He didn't disclose any specific amount, but he did mention that it was equivalent to 1/3 of the annual income of a public university professor in the United States. On average, a professor at a public university in the US earns around $150,000 per year. However, at prestigious institutions, this figure can exceed $200,000 annually. Even at private universities, the pay is considerably high. If we take a conservative estimate of $150,000, that implies he could rake in $50,000 for a 1 to 2 hour speech. This speech took place in an idyllic oasis smack dab in the middle of the desert, at an ultra-exclusive resort. The precise location, however, remained a mystery as he chose not to disclose it. They'd arranged a business-class flight for him, and upon touchdown, a sleek, chauffeur-driven luxury vehicle was ready to spirit him away. The car tore through the arid landscape, hurtling him deeper and deeper into the desert heartland. He recounted that it was a solid 3+ hours before they finally reached their destination. By that time, the sun was on the verge of dipping below the horizon, casting a golden-orange glow over the seemingly endless expanse of sand that had surrounded them throughout the journey. Truly, this resort was a world unto itself, tucked away in the very core of the desert, so much so that he likely had no real clue as to its exact whereabouts. As he sat in the plush interior of the car, his mind was abuzz with questions. Why in heaven's name had they picked such an out-of-the-way spot for the speech? Would anyone actually bother to make the trek out here to listen? He'd initially guesstimated that 100 or so people might show up. But just as he was stewing in his doubts, a thunderous roar shattered the silence. Glancing out the window, he witnessed a sleek, private jet swooping in, keeping pace with his car for a moment before gracefully descending. In that split second, it dawned on him, so this resort has its very own airstrip. This is no run-of-the-mill getaway. And the people coming here are clearly part of a different league. They didn't arrive by car like I did. Upon his arrival at the resort, he proceeded with the check-in procedure. He remarked that, with the exception of the staff attending to him, not a single soul was in sight. This rather piqued his curiosity and seemed somewhat peculiar to him. After all, he had anticipated the presence of approximately 100 individuals. So, he couldn't help but wonder, where exactly had all those people gone? The hotel was extremely luxurious. The rooms were incredibly spacious and even came with a private hot spring, meaning there was a hot spring dedicated solely to his use right inside the room. He had never laid eyes on such a room before.
Nice.
After staying overnight, 2 men showed up to fetch him in a golf cart the next morning and transported him to the venue for the conference. Why a golf cart? He explained that it was because the place was so vast that one had to refer to a map to find any place, otherwise, one would invariably get lost. After the golf cart dropped him off at the destination, he was led into a conference room. He mistook it for a lounge since he was going to give a speech soon. Just then, 5 people strolled in. The moment he laid eyes on them, he knew they were no ordinary folks. It was as plain as day that they were top-notch tycoons, oozing an aura of wealth from every pore. It was only at that moment that he came to understand that today's gig wasn't a public speaking engagement but a private consulting meeting, and the attendees were none other than these 5. He went on to describe what kind of wealthy these 5 were. They were, as he put it, billionaires. When we say billionaires here, we're not talking about those with just over $100 million. We mean folks worth at least a solid $1 billion. And mind you, he also pointed out that their fortunes could soar way higher, potentially hitting tens or even hundreds of billions of bucks. Put simply, these are the big shots who could land a spot on the Forbes billionaires list. Roughly 2,700 to 3,300 uber-wealthy individuals worldwide managed to get their names on that list. Rushkoff said, these 5 guys were mostly from the digital economy scene, like right in the thick of the IT world and hedge funds. Basically, you could split them into 2 gangs, the digital whizzes and the finance wizards. Now, with all that money they had and given we'd been talking about a desert, you'd be forgiven for thinking they were Arabs. But hold your horses. Turns out they were probably Americans. I mean, come on, deserts aren't just in Arabia. You can find them all over the place. And here's the kicker, Rushkoff was playing a bit of a trick on us. There was this photo in his book, and it was a dead ringer for Dubai. He was like, well, it kinda looks like this, but nah, it wasn't. Later on, someone spilled the beans that it was actually smack dab in a desert in the US.
When he was invited to lecture to those uber-wealthy tycoons, surely he must have been required to sign a non-disclosure agreement, right? And yet, he's been talking about this whole affair in public, at various events and even in his books. Is that really appropriate?
Well, as it turns out, he did indeed sign a confidentiality pact. Despite all the chatter, when it comes to the nitty-gritty details like precisely where it took place and exactly who those individuals were, he's remained tight-lipped and hasn't spilled a single bean. Moreover, in actuality, he wasn't there to give a lecture to these 5 tycoons this time. These 5 individuals came fully prepared. They had no intention of letting him do the talking. Instead, they were the ones asking the questions and expecting him to answer. Right from the start, these people launched into their inquiries. At the beginning, the questions were relatively routine. For example, which one has more prospects, Bitcoin or Ethereum? Which technology, VR or AR, holds a greater future? Will it be China or Google that achieves the first quantum computer? Rushkoff said, he revealed that only upon his arrival did he realize he was merely one among a lineup of experts. Others were yet to come, and he wasn't the first. Multiple groups had already been through this process before him. He was simply an authority in a specific domain, and these 5 magnates were eager to hear his perspective. As Rushkoff began fielding their questions, he gradually sensed that their true intent wasn't to extract answers but to conduct a test of sorts. It wasn't about evaluating his intellectual reservoir, though. Instead, they were delving deep into his moral compass, attempting to discern the kind of person he was, and how far he'd go in his responses. In essence, they were putting his values, ethical stance, integrity, and attention to detail under the microscope. Sure enough, as the question and answer session unfolded, the query started taking an unexpected turn. Consider these: between New Zealand and Alaska, which offers a more livable environment? In the event of a global-scale extreme climate scenario, which of these 2 regions would offer greater safety? Which is a more likely threat, extreme climate events or a bacterial warfare outbreak? Assuming no external assistance, what's the minimum duration a doomsday bunker should be engineered to endure? Is it imperative to incorporate an independent air circulation system and a self-contained groundwater supply? And what about the risk of groundwater contamination? The questions grew increasingly concentrated and detailed, with an overwhelming focus on New Zealand and Alaska. Other locales were scarcely considered. Evidently, they had carried out extensive reconnaissance. Later, it came to light that their doomsday bunkers were already in various stages of construction, with one on the verge of completion. Rushkoff noted that throughout the questioning, it was crystal clear these individuals were dead serious. Eventually, they posed a particularly thought-provoking query: when the world faces a cataclysmic event, be it a natural calamity or a man-made disaster, say, World War III breaks out, triggering a nuclear exchange that obliterates assets, property, paper currency, and financial institutions, rendering money obsolete, or a massive electromagnetic pulse wipes out all networks, erasing virtual currencies in an instant. Under such dire circumstances, how can the Doomsday Refuge guarantee that its security personnel won't turn traitor? The security guards are hired to protect these tycoons, so it's an employment relationship. But if your money becomes worthless and all your assets are gone, there's a risk that these guards might turn against you. Why would they still follow your orders? How can you prevent them from defecting? The tycoons said they had a few ideas and wanted to ask Rushkoff if they were feasible. For example, one idea was to design a food storage warehouse that only he could open. If he died, the warehouse couldn't be opened, and the guards would starve. So, the guards wouldn't dare to defect. Another idea was to put a controlling collar around the guards' necks. The collar could be a bomb or something that delivers a high-voltage electric shock. The third idea was that if technology permitted, could they use all AI and robots for security instead? When this question was posed, Rushkoff felt it was a difficult question to answer. He had never anticipated such a scenario. To ease the awkward atmosphere, Rushkoff quipped, "If you don't want them to kill you, make sure not to forget to give a wedding gift when their daughter gets married." He was trying to lighten the mood, and the tycoons chuckled a bit. Rushkoff noted that he could clearly sense that these individuals were less than pleased after hearing his responses. However, he was in a bind. Since he had accepted payment, he was obligated to answer their queries. So, he stayed put. These people were, without a doubt, the wealthiest and most powerful group he had ever encountered in his life. These tycoons harbored an extremely pessimistic view of the future. It was as if, in their eyes, the world was on the verge of descending into chaos, becoming uncontrollable, and perhaps even facing destruction. Moreover, he discovered that this wasn't just the idiosyncratic belief of these few individuals. It seemed that many of today's top-tier billionaires, especially those in emerging technology sectors, shared this sentiment. Take, for example, the man we mentioned earlier, Elon Musk. Why is Elon Musk so intent on sending humans to Mars? It's because, in his view, Earth will soon become uninhabitable. And yet, Mars resembles more of a hellish landscape. Could Earth really be in a worse state than hell? Also, consider Musk's Neuralink project. Isn't it an attempt to upload human consciousness into a computer network, achieving a form of immortality? Rushkoff pointed out that it wasn't just Musk delving into such areas. Sam Altman was also exploring similar concepts. Given that he was involved in artificial intelligence research, he aimed to design an intelligent brain, like container first and then transfer human consciousness into it. Once the consciousness was transferred, it could function just like a person's mind, perhaps even more intelligently, all while retaining the original individual's consciousness. That was his approach. Mark Zuckerberg, on the other hand, had been heavily invested in researching the metaverse. His goal was to enter a virtual world. This was a common trait among this new generation of billionaires. They were attempting to escape reality. Rushkoff remarked that billionaires were indeed more prone to anxiety than the average person. As their wealth grew, the number of things that could bring them happiness or excitement dwindled. Moreover, today's billionaires were different from their predecessors. In the past, wealthy individuals were typically anxious about their health or how to pass on their fortunes to their descendants. They often sought to have more children to expand their family dynasties. However, today's billionaires were mostly single. Many either didn't marry at all or ended up divorced, a stark contrast to the old-fashioned plutocrats. The new breed of billionaires rarely came from large, extended families. Their wealth was largely self-made and individual-centric. Consequently, they scarcely gave thought to family and inheritance issues. Instead, their primary concerns revolved around the potential destruction of Earth or the collapse of human society. Then, is the Earth really going to be destroyed? Rushkoff believes that it's actually quite possible, and perhaps it will be done by the world's top richest people with their own hands. He pointed out that these wealthy people are pushing our society in the direction of dehumanization. As we all know, all digital scientific and technological innovations are ultimately devoted to one thing: automation. And what automation actually means is dehumanization, that is, making the jobs that originally required human labor no longer rely on human efforts. As a result, the human society, which is developing at a high speed towards automation, may eventually evolve into a society that no longer needs human beings. In the past, a large number of workers were needed in factories to do all kinds of jobs. However, after automation was achieved, the number of people in factories has been getting smaller and smaller. So, automation is indeed reducing the participation of human beings in society. Presumably, many people have had a deep understanding of this in the past 2 years. With the rapid development of artificial intelligence, our job opportunities are decreasing day by day, and a large number of workers are facing unemployment. Take the driverless technology that Musk is about to introduce as an example. Once it is realized, all taxi drivers and bus drivers will lose their jobs. Besides, if the drone delivery is popularized, all food delivery workers will also be laid off. On the surface, these technologies seem to be seizing our jobs, but in fact, they are depriving us of our survival value and social value, making us meaningless in society. This is also the reason why, after the development of artificial intelligence, many people have raised such a question: artificial intelligence can do this and that, so what can we human beings do in the future? In fact, the essence of this question is asking about the meaning of our existence. So, the world is now in a rather contradictory state. On the one hand, the development of science and technology has made our lives more convenient, the world has become more wonderful, and the economy has been getting better and better. But on the other hand, the participation of human beings has been continuously decreasing, while the proportion of machines and systems has been constantly rising. In other words, technology giants are trying to create a world that is more convenient but without human participation. Of course, there are two kinds of people in the current world. One kind is those who provide services, and the other kind is those who consume services. Perhaps they each account for half at present. However, in the future, those who provide services will all be replaced by artificial intelligence, and then we will all become the ones who only consume services. But when most of us become the ones who only enjoy services, this so-called enjoyment will no longer exist, because we will no longer have the opportunity to earn income. Moreover, when the participation of human beings in human society becomes lower and lower, another problem will arise, that is, the world and society will gradually lose ethics, morality and humanity. After all, without human beings, how can there be humanity? Machines are developed for the sake of efficiency, so they only focus on correctness and efficiency and don't care about emotions and morality at all. Therefore, the future world will inevitably be a world lacking humanity and morality. Rashkov further pointed out that the impact of digital technology goes far beyond depriving us of our jobs, devaluing our existence, and weakening the humanity of society. It is even eroding human nature. In the logic of digital technology, human nature is regarded as the greatest weakness of humanity and human society. As we often say, humans are often the most uncertain factor in a system. Therefore, to ensure the stability of the system, minimizing human involvement is considered a wise move. That's why most systems nowadays are gradually excluding humans. However, this very uncertainty of humans is precisely a vivid manifestation of human nature. Take bags as an example. Hundreds of years ago, bags were all handmade by craftsmen. The stitches might not be very neat, and the size of each bag varied slightly. It often took several days to make one bag. Later, machine production replaced manual work. The stitches were straight, the sizes were uniform, the time to produce one bag was significantly shortened, and the cost was also remarkably reduced. At first, people thought this was a good thing. But in fact, when you hold a machine-made bag and a handmade one in your hands, the feelings are completely different. The latter is imbued with the warmth of human nature, while the former is cold and mechanical. So, in the future, the most valuable things will be those full of human nature. Mass-produced items, even if there is some human involvement, won't have the same value. Only things made individually, with personal dedication, will be precious. Just like famous paintings. They are of great value because each one is a unique creation. Even if a copy looks exactly the same, it lacks human nature, which will be the most scarce thing in the future society. Moreover, digital technology may even pose a threat to humanity itself. Technology is developing at an astonishing pace. If we can't keep up with its rapid progress, we will be phased out by society. For example, if people of our parents' generation still can't use mobile phones now, they will find it difficult to do many things and will struggle in society. In the future, this rate of elimination will only get faster. How many people can skillfully use AI now? Once you fall behind this technological trend, you may be mercilessly discarded. In the future, the use of AI may become easier, but new technologies will also keep emerging. People must keep up step by step. Once you fall behind, you will be regarded as an outcast of society, face elimination, and eventually fade away. Thus, to some extent, the development of technology is indeed eliminating humans. Those wealthy tycoons have actually foreseen such a cruel future coming soon, a large number of people facing unemployment and survival crises. Such a world is highly likely to trigger riots and wars. Therefore, their so-called precautions are not against natural disasters, but against ordinary people. Those doomsday shelters are not built for the public, nor can ordinary people afford them. They are built by the rich for themselves to guard against the masses. Don't think that just because Elon Musk can send people to Mars, we will have the opportunity. Ordinary people simply can't get that ticket. The people ultimately abandoned will end up in one of two ways, either destruction or, as depicted in the cyberpunk world, struggling to survive under the strict control of large corporations, and life will surely be miserable. Rashkov said that these wealthy tycoons clearly know that this tragic future is the result of their own doing, but they have no intention of sharing weal and woe with the public. He believes that this is the biggest difference between the rulers of the 21st century, these wealthy people, and the rulers of previous eras. Looking back through history, starting from the era of the pharaohs in ancient Egypt, rulers of all dynasties were most concerned about the population. They waged wars and seized lands in order to have more people in their countries. They desired fertile lands that could produce more food and support more people, because they knew that people were the foundation of a country's development. However, these rulers of the 21st century, that is, the wealthy tycoons mentioned by Rashkov, completely ignore the value of people. They are not committed to creating a world suitable for human habitation, but are fully dedicated to creating a world that seems convenient but is actually difficult to survive in, and they have long been preparing for the arrival of such a world. Since this doomsday world is so terrifying, why don't we feel it at the moment? Rushkoff believes that this is because we are at a turning point. At this moment, we are fully enjoying the enormous benefits brought by technology while remaining blind to the potential problems lurking behind it. Nowadays, various physical services are constantly transformed into various applications on mobile phones, making life seem increasingly convenient. However, what is little known is that behind each mobile application, it means that thousands of people lose their jobs. Although technology has created more wealth, this wealth is flowing more and more concentratedly into the hands of the rich. Nowadays, we can only witness the rapid development of technology but ignore the hidden dangers within. These problems will gradually emerge in the future, and the wealthy have already seen the signs. They are well aware that we are on the verge of collapse and have mastered the technology and capabilities to escape from the real society and build a new world. However, they believe that they are powerless to prevent this disaster, so they focus on how to ensure the survival of themselves and their families. These wealthy people firmly believe that the disaster is not likely to happen, but certain to come, and it could break out at any time. Once the disaster strikes, it will trigger a chain reaction like an avalanche, instantly throwing society into chaos. This also explains why they are so eager to build doomsday bunkers or invest in space immigration projects now.